Coming to you from the city of the weird. Exploring topics from the esoteric and unexplored to dimensions unknown. Shining a light of truth on the darkest corners of our reality. Welcome to the Curious Realm.
Well, hello everybody, and happy Tuesday night. Hope everyone is doing well out there in the world. I'm getting ready to, been wrapping this gig that I've been on since October. It's kind of surreal. Don't know how long it's been since I've been behind like a board every single day in that kind of way, you know. But it's been cool. It's been great. Getting ready to go on the road for my typical 22-day stretch during the summer. So get ready for some great pre-recorded content with Joshua Shapiro, Archbishop James Cloud, CJ Arabia, David Tran, Jason Quitt, Stephen Myers, all kinds of fun stuff. We're going to be talking about some great topics. We have some great topics tonight. Sorry, Facebook folks, you may be coming in a minute or two late, and you don't even hear that because we aren't live on Facebook. There's an issue with our stream. We're trying to get up and running right now. I'm going to turn things over to our guest for the first segment here in a second while I try and get that up and running. But our guest in the second part this evening is Kim Desrosiers. We will be talking with her about subtle energies, the energies that are all around us that we connect with chakras and chakral points, how those relate to the world of psi, things like that. So we will be getting into subtle energies with Kimla after our commercial break. In our first segment, we are very happy to welcome back our good friend and the author of the Humaniverse series, Keith Seland. He recently was on expedition to, you may have seen it pop up there at the beginning, folks, when I finger fumbled. That's as live as it gets. Easter Island. He just went on expedition there. I happen to have a chunk of obsidian from Easter Island that was gifted to me. But how was your trip, Keith? What was hey, let's get into how you came to the world of studying ancient civilizations, petroglyphs, things like that, and what took you to Easter Island to begin with.
Yeah, hi. Greetings from Ahu, Tangariki. I'm not there right now. Physically, I'm back home, but my heart and my mind is still there. Just an awesome, awesome place. Another example and opportunity to study ancient cultures of human beings. That's my work as an archaeologist and archaeoastronomer. All of those three disciplines are so close together when it comes to studies of our ancestral human civilizations that hopefully there will be one term that'll encompass it all. But it'll probably be a long term, lots of letters. But in any event, in studying ancient cultures, as I am applying it towards our present and our future, and those futures have a very significant flavor for us to go beyond recognition of other intelligent life forms beyond Earth, beyond human beings, and beyond our animal life. So my studies involve all of those things to the point that when it comes to formal global acknowledgement of first contact and getting beyond first contact and getting into relationships with ET intelligences, the most important factor that's going to be involved in this, we will learn more about ourselves than at any other episode, any other event situation in our history, and probably for the future also. So with that said, my work comes into play I think very, very significantly, in that we're not going to learn all the things about ourselves from our government and from this the want for disclosure and things like that. A lot of people are chasing that avenue. I took one heck of a detour away from that in, again, reasserting that we're going to learn more about ourselves and our futures and our potentials. But when we get to those first contacts and those global contacts and those relationships, so if we learn more about ourselves, it's going to better enable us to become ready to accept and take on those relationships. The best way to do that is to study our ancestors. So going back into the Neolithic times, and I'm talking tens of thousands of years ago, it's been established biologically, genetically, archaeologically, anthropology, and archaeoastronomically that humans of the Rapanui time of a couple of millennia ago, going back into Neolithic times and even Upper Paleolithic, their minds, they lived their lives, their thought processes, their psychologies, their ethos, their ways of life, the way that they interpreted the world and the universe around them, are the same as ours today. And more empirically, like I just mentioned, our DNA is compatible with theirs. So their minds, the study of their minds through the artifacts and the archaeology that they left for us to study, is the most prolific source of learning and study and education and understanding about who we were, where we came from, how we evolved into us today, and putting us on that road for more effective relationships with extraterrestrial intelligences to pave the way for the future and our entry into the cosmic realm, so to speak.
Well, and that is once again what our conversation has always been about, is the fact of we are a lost people. We're a lost civilization. We have forgotten who we are, what we're about. We have forgotten how we got here. And when you look at so many cultures across the globe, and it's fascinating, Keith, to really start looking at origin stories and origin histories. And, like as a comic book fan, it's one of those, like when you get into it and when you really start digging in, there's only like 10 and then variations thereof of the origin story. And when you start looking at the origin stories of humanity across the globe, it's very fascinating how and I will say supposedly without connection, all of these cultures across the globe seem to have a very familiar origin story, seem to have a very familiar idea of how we got here, what we're about, and where we came from. Except us here in the West, except like European society, things like that. When you go to any culture that's been around for that long, it's fascinating to see how deeply rooted that is.
Yeah, but you'd be surprised, and this is where a lot of my work up to this point in time obtains a focus, so to speak, in that, and as I think we'll discuss tonight, the Rapanui were just another example, typical example of a human culture from the past, and like I said, Rapanui goes back a couple of millennia, and it's speculated even longer than that. In other words, beings have lived there even before the ancestral modern Rapanui people. But their lives, their evolution, their minds, their bodies, again, beyond the biological and everything, their ways of life and the information that they left us through archaeology and archaeoastronomy and the anthropology in that This is just, I'm going to display, this is just another example of another human culture from our geological recent past, our biological kind of like a little bit of a distant past, but I mean 20,000 years, the more we learn about our ancient cultures, the more we're reshaping the definitions of what it was to be Holocene, what it was to be Neolithic, what it was to be Upper Paleolithic, and whatnot. So the Rapanui were just another example of a very resourceful community of human beings that took their minds and the materials that they had available to them, proliferated the culture that they did, and gave us just another example of where or the impetus for us to actually turn around for a moment, thank our ancestors for giving us what they gave us in the ways of their civilizations, their accomplishments, and most importantly, their minds, the ways that they thought, the ethnographies and the cosmologies and the results of the proliferation of their cultures. So hopefully by the end of this hour, that you, the viewer, will just put another notch in the blackboard of human being cultures back in the Neolithic times were the same as ours today. And I'm just as the more places I visit, the more cultures I study, the more examples of that is actually going to be, part of the proof, so to speak, that we do have a lot to learn, and we should be learning a lot about our ancestors and how their minds worked, and translated to today, our minds, our rituals, our psychology, our day-to-day lives mirror the lives of our ancestors in many, 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 many ways.
They really do. And it was funny because I saw somebody post today on social media like, when do you think the new dark ages will begin? And I'm like, my man, you are in the middle of them. You're in the middle of them. You're in the middle of half the world wanting to burn people because, the sun revolves around the earth. You know what I mean?
And that's that's not something catastrophic or
no. It's a mentality.
It's another episode.
Yeah.
In the history of human cultures going through those situations. Those things go back to the Neolithic times. You go back to the Tepe communities of the Levant. In what's now the Middle East. You go back to the Aborigines in Australia, even 30, 40,000 years ago. Human beings, when they started living together in communities, was when the beginning of the new current social culture and its many iterations actually began. The behavior set, the attitude and behavior set, in which I do very, very deep studies in correlating the human psychology, the human neurology, with the artifacts and the archaeology that was left for us to study from our ancestors. So this is just the dark ages. How about calling it the dark day? Because this is just another blip. Another episode in the parabolic wave, so to speak, the sine wave that follows and tracks light ages, dark ages, light days, dark days, or whatever. This is just another episode, even though it's going to take maybe a few or maybe more than a few years to shake out.
Well,
that's just the way it is.
Let's start getting into that, because that is something that also, once again, ancient cultures had a keen grasp on, which was the cyclical nature of not only nature, but humanity. And the fact that there was a distinct cycle, and that was a huge, huge part of life for the Rapanui. And let's let's distinguish the fact real quick for the audience. It was something very interesting that you brought up pre-show conversation, which was Rapanui and Rapanui, because we're going to be referring to both tonight, and you have to understand when we're referring to them in context. You'll understand now why it's Rapanui or Rapanui. So what is the difference between Rapanui and Rapanui?
So if you see the printed word Rapanui, and if you see it as one word, that's describing the geography, the place, the land that is Easter Island. If you see Rapanui as two words, you're seeing the description or the context of the people themselves. The term Rapanui, while there is no general agreement as to its provenance, its source, there's very heavy argument towards Polynesian and possibly Melanesian sources for the construct or the etymology of the term Rapanui, but nothing is confirmed enough to be considered empirical or unmutable or unchangeable, so to speak. So it's still open for potential. It was just actually partly a matter of convenience that I'll say the white man actually put the term Rapanui brought it into existence. So two words is description of the people, or I'm sorry, two words is the people, one word is the geography, the landmass itself. Big difference, but so when you see it printed like that.
Yeah. And let's start getting into that, because it is, once again, when you look at it, I mean, Hawaii doesn't appear huge on a map to begin with, but it dwarfs Easter Island. And Easter Island is really out there as far as location, proximity to anything else. How did the Rapanui first come to Easter Island? What is their origin story for getting there, Keith?
Yeah, that's another, Chris, that's another point of contention. There's controversy there with that, thanks mostly now to modern genetic analysis. But so Easter Island, Rapanui, one word, it lays about 2,200 miles to the west, directly west of where is Santiago, Chile now. Geologically speaking, Easter Island was created as a group of, how I put this, either islands that have broke the landmass or seamounts that were created by volcanoes that kept building up but had not cracked the surface of the ocean like the Hawaiian Islands did. Same geologic process for Easter Island and the Hawaiian Islands. If you were to drain the oceans in the Hawaiian Islands, you would see the geology. It's created by what are called hotspots. Magma, ultra hot magma coming up from many, many miles below the ocean through cracks in the mantle and through a subduction geologic process. The volcanoes kept building up mass and mass and mass. Most of those became seamounts, which are rock masses that didn't break the surface. The Hawaiian Islands are those that actually did and became land masses suitable for civilization, so to speak, and occupation and whatnot. But through the geology processes of subduction mostly and those hotspots, if you were to drain the oceans, the Hawaiian Islands, you would see thousands of miles of volcanoes leading from southeast to northwest up through what I believe Midway and what's the other island I'm thinking of in the far west during World War II? Oh my gosh, brain blank. In any event, you would see the geologic process, the Hawaiian Islands from southeast to northwest, extending out for thousands of miles. Easter Island is part of the seamount chain that is not quite as long, but the same processes have accumulated through geologic time to produce the landmass that is Easter Island. So, real quick, the size of Easter Island as it lies 2,000 miles out in the ocean. Incidentally, Pitcairn Island, and there's other islands too, out to the west of Easter Island that is part of this seamount geologic chain that I've just mentioned. So Easter Island, the size of it. Now I live, for those of you viewers, I live up in suburban Buffalo, New York. One of the suburbs here is called Grand Island. It sits between Buffalo and Niagara Falls, and it splits the Niagara River from the U.S. from the Canadian side. Grand Island is 63 square miles footprint. Easter Island is 63 and a half square miles footprint. So those two islands are about 10 by 6 miles, the same size of the island. So a little bit of the geography. So where the foundation, or where the origin of the human ancestral immigrants to Easter Island, which would have taken place, generally agreed to be about 1700 years ago or so. There's strong influences, and this is controversial, there are strong influences that there's characteristics of Polynesia, there's characteristics of Melanesia. There is also characteristics of humans that had the genetic makeups of the Negro population. And some current DNA research has opened up another can of study to where strains of the genome have been identified to have shared characteristics with those natives of mainland South America, specifically Chile and Peru. So you've got potential arguments in anywhere from medical and DNA analysis to archaeology, artifacts, to anthropology, to artistic implementations, such as some of the archaeology and artifacts, the styles and creation of art, and architecture is the word I want to use. So you bring all those different sciences into, and there's characteristics that exist on Rapanui from potentially immigrants coming from all of these places. There's no consensus as to where the ultimate origin of the Rapanui is actually taking place. But you've got Melanesia, Polynesia, Negro, and also DNA Negro and DNA from the opposite direction, South America. So it's a very ongoing process that I believe science will have a lot of work to do, but will be able to give us a lot of answers coming up in the future.
And that is really fascinating to think about that. And whenever you look at the moai standing behind you, whenever you look at specifically the headdresses, things like that, yes, that does seem very Chilean, South American, things like that. They are very reminiscent of that.
And besides the DNA, now, as you see behind me now, this is Ahu Tangariki. This is an example. Ahu means temple. And you see the raised platforms of the 15 moai in the background. Those constructions, the stone laywork, the architecture of those is highly reminiscent of ancient Andean South American cultures. The stonework is replicated like Ollantaytambo or Sacsayhuaman in Peru, where they use no mortar, but the fit and the construction of the stones laid together does not follow a geometric uniform pattern. You have potentially 10, 11, and 12-sided stones as the Ahu platforms to which a
Mm.
lot of Moai reside. A common characteristic and coordination and correlation with ancient Andean cultures. You have the Ahu themselves, which bear very strong resemblance to Polynesian ancestry
Yeah.
and some Melanesian ancestry. And the facial the carvings, and I'll call, I don't like saying artwork when it comes to symbolism
Yeah.
and rock art and things like that. I don't like calling it art. It's symbolism, it's communication, but
Well, it's
for
made
sake
for
of
the sacred.
pop culture, yeah, that's exactly. So
Yeah.
modern culture calls it pop art, but in any event, there's attributions to Polynesia and to Melanesia, and in the structures of some of the faces, and the other cultural accoutrements to where the pigments, skin pigments of the residents there. Some were very, very dark, some were very not so dark, and some were very white. So, in other words, establishing potential for correlation with Negro
Mm.
cultural and or biological characteristics. So there's where the controversy swells around, and it's not going to be resolved anytime soon.
Yeah.
But the Rapanui exhibited all of these characteristics, and not just as one-offs. They are popular and repeated throughout their cultural accoutrements and their cultural history.
Well, and inside of that, because there's a lot of misunderstandings. I've been bringing up this Google Arts and Culture, which if you haven't gone to it, folks, it's wicked cool stuff. We're going to see a couple things here. But number one, this is what most people think of Easter Island, Keith. And what I'm showing folks that are just listening is it just looks barren. All right. This is what most people think Easter Island is. There's the whole hypothesis that, oh, they chopped all the trees down, moving the moai and all kinds of things. But that is not correct, because if you come back to this section of Ahu Nau Nau that I had up, you can clearly see there's plenty of trees, things like that. Like this place was, yes, once far differently populated, with tree, with people, with all kinds of things. So it's interesting because what did happen to them? Where did they go? Why did they go?
And this is where, as I bring into the overview, example of tonight's study is the Rapanui civilization. This is another example of many characteristics, common characteristics amongst all ancient human civilizations worldwide through history and through archaeohistory. When you bring in human beings, you bring in their way of life, their psychology, their day-to-day, their evolutions. In all ancient cultures, as is today, when human beings are living in communities, and they come to find the most important things, and I'm going to keep, I bring up a very popular and very celebrated person in my mind, Abraham Maslow and his pyramid. Human beings, physiologically and psychologically, they need food, water, and shelter. Okay. If at a time in a civilization's advancement, if those elements of life, oxygen also too is the most important one, but so if those things become not present, aka famine of some sort, that's the most common reason that human communities will either go to war, or they, if they're allowed to, physically migrate and move to another place. We still do that today. Our minds are our ancestors. We are them, they are us. So in the Rapanui culture, The argument really shouldn't be an argument of, well, they mismanaged their tree, so to speak. They may not. That may be a little partly uh, on a road to being a reason why, but the other main reasons are ecologically that human beings would experience the famines and then take to war or take to migration, just like animals do. They follow the food. Back when the last ice age ended, the animals didn't have to travel as far anymore. They didn't have to migrate. Human beings didn't have to migrate. They settled down, became sedentary, and then developed their architecture or their agricultural minds and whatnot. So,
Yeah.
ecologically speaking, there's been study done, and there still needs to be more when you talk about the climate change and what's happening today with the rise of the ocean levels. While there haven't been enough empirical studies done at Rapanui, it's suspected that the landmass of Rapanui, this is why I elaborated on it a minute ago, was actually larger than what it is today because of the rising of the oceans.
Interesting.
Yes. So we can get into, if we have time, exploration of other questions that I have regarding the movement of statues, the transportation of the Moai statues and whatnot by sea. But I'll stray right back to the point being that, so you've got reasons for humans going to war or destroying a civilization or migrating. You've got the Maslow considerations of food, water, and shelter. You've got the ecological considerations of climate change, and then you've got the activities of the human mind, which I think in the case of the Rapa Nui, at least two of those, if not all, at least two of them come into play in terms of why it looks like a barren land now.
Yeah.
Where it may not have 1,500 years ago or 1,000 years ago, or when James Roggeveen, the Dutch explorer, first landed on Easter Island in 1722. He the first white man, he saw a land more like what we see today than what was back then. Wood was extremely important. The Pacific rosewoods and the palm trees and the species like that was very important, and they were very prolific in producing enough food and water and building their shelters to where they could fit a population that's expected 40,000 people at any one time lived on Easter Island.
Interesting.
A millennia or two ago. So I think the only human characteristic or the factor of maybe warring peoples or invasion was not a factor in the demise, the eventual demise. There was another factor, and it is a human factor, and it's called the white man, which was the demise of the Rapanui culture.
We didn't tend to help people like get better as we came along, you know.
Yeah, Chris, it's the same story as the Spanish, the Inquisitions, and the taking over of North America and the eventual missionaries and whatnot. And I want to bring up, this ties into, hopefully one point I can bring up is a discussion on what the phenomenon that's called cargo cults. And this will tie in with what we're talking about here. So when the white man came in 1722 on April the 4th, it was Easter Day. That's how Easter Island got its name. And then there wasn't another white man visit for decades after that. But that first visit and those future visits by James Cook and British explorers into the 1800s. This ties into my introduction to what a cargo cult is. And this is a fascinating and potentially very rewarding source of knowledge for human beings today in learning about our cultures, our ancestors. The cargo cult was a popular, that's the popular name of a 20th century phenomenon in the, well, the Pacific Ocean, the Pacific atolls and
Yeah.
Melanesia, Polynesia, and whatnot. During World War II, as an intro, the native cultures there who were living in the same ways of life as the Rapanui were, when they saw the Allied warships and the planes and the soldiers in the uniforms dressed up, and the color of their skin, the white man being so much different, and some Negroes, some black and some darker people, and some Native Americans, and Scandinavians, all different skin pigments. When they saw the what's called the John From, one of the soldiers was named John From. He was a sergeant, and the phenomenon was nicknamed the John From culture. The indigenous thought that the white man were gods. In that example, the soldiers brought food unlimited, brought water unlimited, brought materials for shelter building, all of those Maslow human life characteristics. The indigenous, in their mindset, naturally thought these are gods. They're bringing us the sources of things to live with.
Built effigies to the plains.
After a time, the soldiers left. The indigenous, in their sacrality and in their spirituality and their religiosity, they then built examples of ships and architecture, what you see on the screen right now, as effigies in worship to encourage those soldier gods, John From and his companies, to come back. They were the new source of life for the indigenous. That became their new religion. It broke their whole conception of religiosity and sacrality, worship to their gods. The white man was a new god introduced to them. The same thing happened in Rapanui, in Easter Island, when the white man came. That really was the beginning of the destruction of the Rapanui cultures, as we know from the Moai and from the Birdman. When the white man appeared, they were deemed as the new gods. The only big difference in the two, and this is critically important, the John From 20th century, World War II, cargo cults, they were philanthropic. They gave food, they gave shelter, they gave water, unlimited. The white man, from Roggeveen and the Dutch to the English explorers, pillaged. Pillaged. There's your difference right there.
Well,
the Rapanui. I'm sorry. The Rapanui saw the white man and saw their advanced weaponry and whatever. These were the new gods. And then the old traditions of the Moai and especially the Birdman cult, which had taken over in the last few hundred years, the Birdman culture, began to crumble. Whereas after 40, 50 years later, James Cook and then a few other explorers, that when they came, they found that the Moai, which had been mostly upright standing at the very first visit, now were being toppled over to where after into the 1800s, none of the Moai were left standing. The Rapanui culture was in ruins.
Wow. And as we've mentioned so many times with you, with Jared Murphy, with other people, it doesn't take long. It doesn't take long. It doesn't take long for A, a culture to topple, or B, a culture to forget. To forget its roots, where it came from, its language, everything. Like a generation. Let it go a generation.
So that is a third reason, and it is a very human reason why the Rapanui culture. So you've got natural reasons such as ecology and geology coming into play, and then you've got the human factor, which seems When you cross-cut amongst all ancient human cultures, you're generally going to find those things as those three categories, compartments, as factors for the demise of a civilization. And again, that's my work, is to compare these cultures and to come to conclusions and say, hey, look, human beings today, our ancestors, their minds were the same as ours. They also had to experience the same ecology, the same climate change as we do
Yeah.
today. And all of those factors put together are going to be the sources of your reasons why a human civilization gets deposed in favor of another civilization, or just abandoning the land completely.
Yeah. Yeah, precisely. And uh with that, before, because of course before the abandonment, there was some amazing culture. There was some fascinating cultural ritual, things like that. Let's start here in the last 20 minutes or so, Keith. Let's begin getting into the Moai themselves. Why the Moai? Why make them? Why make so many of them? What were their use? What was their purpose? And especially, how did they get to where they are? Because they're massive, they're huge.
They're yeah. There's some of them stretch out to, and these are full bodied. As you can see here, they're not just heads. They were full bodies, and some of them can measure up to upwards of 100 feet and weigh many dozens of tons.
Yeah,
Now, in terms of the numbers, it's the numbers change upwards as time goes on, to where now I've been instructed that more than 1,000 moai actually exist. The demise of the Rapanui was very catastrophic, and took well over 100 years for any kind of meaningful repair and maintenance, so to speak. All the moai were toppled over, and by the 1800s, when the Christian missionaries were in full force there, and put the final nail in the coffin of the classic Rapanui culture and the Birdman, with their threatening prophecies that the Birdman was actually the devil, and that they should convert to Christianity. Well, the reasons that the Rapanui did convert over, and very, very quickly, is that you go back to the mindset of the cargo cult. The missionaries did bring food, did bring shelter, did bring water, did bring improved way of life, a new renewal of prolific agriculture and whatnot. That's natural in the human mind when those things are brought, that the conversion in a religious sense is going to be quick and efficient and whatnot. So in terms of the numbers of the Rapanui and the Moai, just compare it to the number of pharaohs in Egypt.
sure.
Now you've got in the temple there, you've got the Hall of Records for every single pharaoh that existed. So when you look at the Moai here and you say, my gosh, there's over 1,000 Moai. These are representations. They are human. This is in all of my studies, this is one of the more extreme examples to where there's lesser questions as to a cosmic or extraterrestrial nature or attribute to any of these things. The Moai statues are human, and they represent human chiefs from their history. You've got the 7 explorers who, in a spatial sense, the 7 explorers Ahu faces out over the ocean, whereas characteristically most of the other Ahu, the Moai face inland. There's only a couple of examples where Moai face outwards towards the sea. The 7 explorers is one example of that, where they're looking back towards their creator, so to speak, as a directional beacon for immigrants and newer people to come ashore. But the Moai are all representative of human beings. There's no real discernible attributions of extraterrestrial or extra human being characteristics or whatnot. I will qualify that by saying, and as we speak here right now, there is the start of a very big research effort. The Moai, some of the ones that are, especially the ones that are still residing back on the road, so to speak, or back at the Roraraku quarry where they come from, only in the quarry in those places you can only see their heads. Well, we've got study teams now that are actually digging underneath to expose the entire bodies. That's an example at Roraraku. Underneath there is a whole body, and they are adorned with glyphs, symbolism, petroglyphs, and bas-reliefs and rock art and whatnot. They've only started to excavate some of those Moai statues. There's going to be hundreds, and it's going to take 100 years and some, political cooperation in order to expose those. And we may find that there may be some creator god, non-human attributions to be found with those. But from everything that we understand right now, the Moai are representatives of chiefs, human chiefs of the tribes going back through history. And you're going back over 1,500 years. The classical Moai culture existed from roughly 200 to 300 BCE up to about 14 to 1500, when the Birdman cult took over as the ethnography and the ruling ethos of the Rapanui culture. So it's to say that the Moai were stopped, the quarrying of Moai were stopped at roughly in the 1400s, maybe up to 1500, when the Birdman became the new chiefdom, so to speak, the new ruling warrior power of the Rapanui culture. So, but the Moai are all human. It's expected the first Moai king was named Hotu Matua. And again, going back potentially upwards of 2,000 years, 1,800 years. And it's expected that not too long after that was the fashioning of the first Moai, in which there are examples to where the first classic examples, the Moai weren't as large. As time went on, as the generations went on, the size of the Moai, human mindful characteristic, actually got larger and larger and larger. Examples of that mindset and psychology exist all over ancient civilizations. Just another characteristic of how similar the Rapanui were to other ancient human cultures.
Well, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Please go.
No, you go.
Well, one of the viewers was mentioning that typically along with people coming to the islands, things like that. Like a great example is Hawaii didn't really have rats till Anglos came. Things like that, like critters like that, come from mainland areas, not islands. They don't like naturally exist there. So you end up with invasive species. You end up with invasive disease. You end up with Chris, all kinds of things.
I thank you for bringing that up. That's another reason for the demise of the Rapanui culture. You've got the medical, you've got smallpox, and you've got another disease called phthisis. And doctors don't even know. That's basically the 19th century term for tuberculosis. Phthisis. PHTHISIS.
Phthisis.
The white man brought those.
Wow. And thank you Claire with blue hair on YouTube for bringing that up
Yep.
because that is a huge thing to bring up. You know, much like America, everything else, much like South America, things like that. Like it was ravaging it, and when it happens in windfall fashion,
Yeah.
because it's
So
something that
yeah.
an
So
ecosystem can't bear.
yeah, so when you inspect the moai and you see their anatomy, their features and whatnot, the distended ears and the eyes and the poku, the top hats that are on some of them, as you can see here. Not all of them, not all the moai existed. The poku, which is the top hat, is a function of I don't want to say importance because all the chiefs were equally important, but the poku is a marker to display extra special worship for those chiefs that did more, either more important or more spectacular things in their lives. It's like ranking of the presidents.
Okay.
Some presidents were run of the mill, then you've got Lincoln and Washington and that are extra special. The Pokus was a representation of that in one way. So not all the Moai had Pokus, but the attributions continue with the anatomy and the facial features. The Poku was a sign of royalty, of power and control and other human psychology characteristic universal amongst all ancient cultures. Then you've got the distended ears, which the Rapanui confirmed that these existed. They weren't biological mutations. The chiefs wore these very heavy, they created the distended ears. Physically, physiologically, they created those things by having these earrings hang down. The chiefs are therefore represented in that way. The ears, the distended ears, and the eyes, which weren't apparent or aren't expected to have been present on all the moai, but the anatomy, the ears and the eyes are extremely sacral and spiritually important for the proliferation and the continuation of the Rapanui culture. The ears and the eyes are examples of what they call the life force or the mana. The mana is that life force which, through the eyes and through the distended ears, transfer power and control from one human being as the source to the receiver, which could be another human being, which could be another object of either adornment or communication or whatever the purpose of the interaction is. The eyes and the ears were the most important communicators of the mana, and the mana was the life source of the Rapanui people. Without the mana, without the eyes and the ears, the mana could not be communicated or could not be transferred. And that includes not only amongst three-dimensional universe, but in the multiverse or in the cosmic universe also. So that's why you see the eyes are very sacred. And there's an interesting, our guide Cecilia, she told us there's a groundswell of support, speculation that the demise of the Rapanui culture has to do also with what are called the Karanga Wars. It was the war between the worker culture and the royalty, the Karanga Wars. And that's where the result was the Moai were toppled over. You had the Birdman cult, then the white man came, and the workers revolted against the royalty. And one of the manifestations was the Moai were topped over on its sides. But a growing popular myth is that the eyes were not destroyed. They were, in fact, taken by the Karanga, and they were hidden in caves, and the caves were sealed because destruction of the eyes, like destruction of the distended ears, would have meant the destruction of the mana life force. that perpetuates the Rapanui culture. So somewheres maybe in the future, we might come to find a discovery in a cave where these eyes will be discovered,
Interesting.
and just add another fantastic chapter onto the existence and the knowledge base of the Rapanui people. But again, it's through their minds that they created all of these manifestations and their ethnography and cosmogony and way of life and everything. And to their credit, this the classical culture has existed for almost 2,000 years, and there's support that there was other inhabitants of Easter Island even more than 2,000 years ago. That's getting more speculative, but maybe for another time. But so the Moai were human representations of the chiefs, going back through their history. And if you do the arithmetic, the numbers kind of make some sense. If this culture goes back to 200 or 300 AD, you've got 1,200 years worth of, or more or less, of the Moai architecture in existence before the Birdman took over and the demise of the quarrying of the Moai statues.
Now, and this may take us over time by just a couple minutes, Keith, but I know you're always more than amenable. Now, the whole how they got into place. There is the traditional story that the Moai walked into place, that they walked themselves to their locations. Now, there was a pretty cool study done a few years ago that kind of used the rounded bottom of the Moai and stuff like that as a means by which to wobble them, basically using a rope system from the head and making it wobble by pulling it left and right, left and right, left and right, and basically walking the stone into place. It's pretty interesting. It's a fascinating concept, the idea that they actively walk the stone. It's showing from live science right here, folks. That and like you can see, it's not like they have like a team of like thousands of people on these mile-long ropes. This is like a 50-foot rope with like 15 people moving this multiple-ton Moai
back and forth. Now, there's good arguments for and against this. As you see in the example there, now notice one characteristic that this Moai statue is not really the entire length and size of typical Moai statues.
Yeah,
I mean,
of
you
the
see
other
the
that I
people in the
showed.
example. That's a very, you
Much
have
larger.
to watch out for these. I don't mean to rail on this, but these archaeologists that get grant money and they do their 1 hour or 2 hour documentaries by showing an example to where 15 people can move this thing
now, granted,
100 feet in a whole day. That's, first of all, it's not a proof of concept in my mind. So I'll just say
not for all Moai, no, but when you're talking about this Moai here, that size, and compare it to, one like that yes, you can clearly see is not based into the ground the way that the large one is over here. Like there's two different type of Moai there. One that's equally tall over the ground as it is under, and one that just rests on top.
And I'll give you right now an equally positive argument in that amongst the anthroarchaeologists, the studiers and explorers from Easter Island, I'll mention three: Catherine Routledge, Alfred Matreau, and William Malloy of the 20th century. And Catherine Routledge was still to this day, she lived there with her husband back at the beginning of World War I, 1914 to 15, for 18 months. And she has the most documented record of the Rapanui culture out there. She actually discovered roads that existed that circled the island and some roads that moved inland serving as transportation avenues for those Moai statues to be walked across the island. Totally reasonable, positive argument in that
Awesome.
way. She was the one that discovered them,
Well,
and many of them.
And I will say this. Yeah, is that the solution for all of them? Absolutely not. But I will say this for these good people. They have on scale at least produced more result than any study trying to produce a Great Pyramid of Giza on scale in a scale amount of time, or be able to demonstrate how it was built or anything like that. So at least this is demonstrable.
And at least steers one a little bit more away from the popular pop culture ET concept, where as opposed to the pyramids, well, sound acoustics were used to gravitate and whatnot. My impressions of the Rapanui, and this is another example to where more things were done and perpetuated on the human scale with the Rapanui people than maybe in some other cultures. Now, I'm going to throw out one other potential, I'll just call it not even a theory, I'll just call it a notion, and with the lead potentially to a hypothesis. Now, in my time there, I looked a lot out into the water, and the thoughts hit me that, maybe with some of the statues, and especially the full-length ones, the potential that they actually built a sort of barge using tree trunks and whatnot, went out to the shore. Wherever the main quarry is right next to the water, where some of them possibly, I'm saying that this is not impossible. I'm saying that it's going to take some study to move this to hypothesis and to verification. But I'm conjecturing that they took some of those, they built barges, they got them out onto the barge, and they floated them around the island to their permanent positions.
Okay. Now, let me ask you this. When
you're talking... Oh, yeah, go ahead.
No, are there any out in the water?
That's
though they've fallen off a barge?
Potential source of study. I was going to bring up that now when you bring back climate change into the factor, and you're saying, and when you're saying that these Moai could have been built 1,500 years ago, the ocean levels, the water levels at the time, you can still wade out from Easter Island onto the Turtle Bay. You can wall out and you can surf in the whole bit. Now, if you drain the water, the shape of a volcano is roughly pyramidal shape, but it's very steep. So, but what I'm saying is 1,500 or 1,000 years ago, the ocean levels may have been lower enough to where it was more feasible that there was more land space available. They could walk, get the Moai statue onto a barge made of tree trunks and whatnot, floated it out into the water, and with the rope pulley system, maneuver those around the island in the same way, in the same directions as the Moai being walked back and forth. So I'm saying is I want to display that all those three methods are reasonable, possible, and I'm suspecting may have been used.
Well, and
all three of them.
And like I'm saying, though, the demonstrable way to prove that is guaranteed there would have been failure along the way. Waves would have gotten too high. Somewhere there's a few Moai that fell off of a boat, and it looks like they fell out like face down, what have you, halfway covered in sediment on the bottom of the ocean, or fully covered in sediment found by LIDAR, something along those lines. There surely would have been a failure if that was the case. So
I know
they didn't get it right 1,000 times.
I know of no testing that exists.
So that just a
No
interesting
experiments
concept,
to test
you know,
that.
to
Yep.
go down with like
None.
a LiDAR drone and actually sonar the bottom and see if you can find any moai that are like that to prove that
And in
concept,
my
Keith.
in my mind, it would only take one,
Yeah.
and then my my conjecture goes right past hypothesis and into theory that, well, now how did the moai, did it walk out into the water?
Yeah, yeah.
Or whatever. I'm being facetious here, but again, all three of those methods seem reasonable and acceptable. And again, I'll point to the work of mostly Catherine Routledge for discovering many of the, her and her husband, who was also an anthropologist, did most of the grunt work to make the discoveries of knowledge, most of it what we know today. And a lot of her knowledge has never even been transcribed. She does have a one famous book. I'll hold it up here, Mystery of Easter Island, and I'll try and
It's magically
get
it's magically disappearing as part of the background.
yeah, The Mystery of Easter Island. It's her diary, but she was the discoverer of the roads that the moai walked to get to their in sacrality to their permanent resting place in their Ahu temple, and for the worship, the ancestral worship for that chieftain's descendants to perpetuate in the hundreds of years or thousands of years after their earthly demise, so to speak, or whatever. So all three of those concepts, I believe, are not only possible, I believe that they're reasonable, and that as time goes on, we may find that all three of them will have been, in fact, been reality as to how they moved their moai.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And they had the trees to do them.
Sure.
Wood cultures, and one thing we didn't mention was the Rongo Rongo. I'll mention this as a tablet. So I mean, this is made of wood, and the Rongo Rongo tablets, in which there were thousands of them, and concomitant with the destruction of the Rapanui culture, the white man took most of the codexes and destroyed them.
Yeah, yeah, just like they did
the
with
Mayans
and Aztecs, and yeah.
They had the raw materials, is my point.
Absolutely, and not just that, the ingenuity. I guess the last question would be, because of course, do you work them before? Do you work them when they get there? Where would the chert be? You know, is there like were they carved at quarry and then transported, or were they carved at location and then erected?
In stages, Chris, but they use their minds, they use their not intuition, their intelligence. It was a process, and it was multi-step. They carved out the basic form and structure, and you may take this process and transpose it over to answer a question: how the Egyptian obelisks were carved out of quarries. They would carve around the three sides, then carve to the underside at one end, enough to where they could then chalk up that one corner, whether it be the lower or upper end, chalk it with stones, and then continue quarrying down the length of it and chalking up along the way till they get to the other end of it. And then what you've got is a moai lying on its side, as you can see in the front here, just for example, lying on its side, but chalked underneath with stones, so that they could then tip the moai upright. And as you saw in the Raraku hillside, very steep, they could very easy to keep it from, make it from supine to erect it upright, and then slide it down the hill for the eventual transportation, whatever method they used, to get to its final Ahu temple platform, its final resting spot. So they did it. They just carved out the basic. They got it upright, slid it down the hill some way, and then they started adding details to it, but only some along the way, because it is found that on the island, there are examples to where in various works in progress, so they didn't completely inscribe or provide the finishing touches till they got them to the Ahu platform. It was a process. They did some detail and then they moved them. Then they did a little more detail, got it to the final resting space, and then they finished the artistic construction or
embellishments and
the
blandishments.
final product.
Yeah,
That's right. The adornments of them. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it was a process, very well thought out, very precise, and provable. I mean, it's proven. That's how that part. That's how they did it. How they moved them there. It's a little more speculative, but
well, Keith, I want to thank you as always for coming on, man. I was so excited for you whenever you said that. Like, I could see the excitement in you whenever you said you were going to Easter Island, and to follow the trip, to see the pictures, to see the things that you did, to hear of the experiences, and to once again, you are a sponge. You soak this stuff up. You research it before you go. You have so much information. So thank you so much for sharing it with us tonight. Thank you so much for the candid conversation, even the parry and thrust of hypothesis. So that's what it's about. That's what it's about.
But,
if you can't do that, even in science, folks, and have a differing opinion in that kind of way, there's a problem, and you need to consider that.
I'm just trying to get the knowledge out there. It exists. Learning, getting to know ourselves. Our ancestors just have an unlimited Akashic record library, the largest library you can think of learning and knowledge and education about who we were, who we are, and helping us to pave our path, so to speak, transport us into our future. So,
Absolutely.
Rapanui, just another example.
And before we let you go, let everybody know where they can go to purchase your Humaniverse series of books, where they can go to find out more, where they can go to follow everything that is Keith Seland.
Yeah, everything. My branding, so to speak, is the Humaniverse or the Humaniverse Guide website. I've got some new articles up there. I'm doing a lot of writing here coming up in the next few months. I'm going to do an article on Easter Island, and I'm going to get on the website and also Substack and Medium media platforms.
Great.
My books are available at all the booksellers, all 4 of them for right now. I'm doing research papers currently. Actually, just last week I was in Cahokia in Native America in Illinois, and I'm going to be doing publishing a couple of research papers about the Cahokia culture. And coming up, I'll be at Chaco Canyon doing a similar research paper structure there on my way to Roswell, New Mexico, where I'll be speaking at the museum there at Memorial Day. And then from there, Chris, I'm going out to not Easter Island. Oh, I wish. Contact in the Desert out in California.
Nice.
At the end of May, back to Roswell for the 4th of July, their UFO festival.
I should be seeing you there.
Didn't even. Oh yeah, awesome, Chris. Yeah, come there. And this you don't even know yet that we'll be together at the MUFON Symposium in Cincinnati.
All right.
So I'll be watching your lecture there definitely.
Cool.
We'll hook up there too.
That is where we met was MUFON, Colorado. So that'll be some full circle, my friend. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Few years ago. So I'll be seeing you there. Great, and all those things. Great. So social media, the Facebook usual thing, the website, Humaniverse Guide, and the books are there. And just doing I may be going to Turkey later this year too, in September. Back to Göbekli Tepe and a couple of areas, Saybirch and a couple of places around there. So that's not definite yet with our political situation, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But,
fantastic, Keith. Always great catching up with you. Always great talking with you about these amazing, amazing deep things regarding humanity, culture, where we've been, where we're going, and how they are integrally intertwined. So I'll be sharing links as usual, all kinds of stuff.
We are them, they are us. You got to
right.
get Ty on one of your episodes.
What's that?
You got to get Ty on one of your episodes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just
I think
I
was that who I met at 4th of July last year? I can't remember. Anyway, take.
Oh yeah. Okay, a little inside.
Deep cut. That's way inside baseball, folks. Anyway, you take care of yourself, bud. I'm going to go ahead and let you go. I'll share links as usual. Feel free to tune in for the rest of the episode. All right.
All right, Chris. Good. Thanks
Take
a lot,
care,
man.
my
Good.
friend.
Yeah.
All right.
Keep in touch about Roswell too.
Oh, you bet. You bet. All right.
All right, man.
Take care.
All right. Enjoy.
All right.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Well, you are online, everybody, checking out everything from Keith Seland over at the Humaniverse. Humaniverse, thehumaniverse.org is his website. Make sure to stop on by curiousrealm.com/store. That is where you can find all of the books from our guests like Keith, all of the movies, videos, classes, all kinds of things. That's also where you can find your link to Curious Research, where we have all kinds of free research tools over there where you can examine data, all kinds of things for photographs, video, all kinds of stuff. So absolutely free, where you can file a FOIA request. So stop on by, check that out, everybody. Whenever we come back from this quick commercial break, we will be joined by our friend Kim Desrosiers. We will be talking about subtle energies, that connection that we have to the world around us, how we can learn to tune into that, how we can learn to tune our bodies with that, how we can learn to get in tune with our chakras, with the universe, and with all of the energies that we are. When we come back from this break, right after this, folks.
The key to good science is good research. At the heart of good research is a good data set. With the field observation and encounter log from Curious Research, you can easily keep track of your investigative information all in one place, making it easier to review cases and readily see comparisons and contrasts between them. Whether out in the woods squatching, in a back room gathering EVPs, or using high-tech gear to track UFO, UAP activity, this easy-to-carry, pocket-sized scientific data log is the perfect companion for any field researcher. You can find your copy of the Curious Research Field Observation and Encounter Log at Amazon.com or visit the official Curious Realm store at curiousrealm.com/store to reserve your copy for yourself, your family, or a mind that you want to open. That website again is curiousrealm.com/store.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back from that quick commercial break. Thank you so much for staying with us. Thank you so much to our friend Keith Seland for that amazing segment about his expedition to Rapanui. And also, thank you to our sponsors, especially True Hemp Science. If you are a user of CBD products like I am, folks, stop on by TrueHempScience.com today. Christopher Lynch and True Hemp Science use a spagyric process where every part of the hemp plant is used. I mean every part. Seeds, stems, buds, leaves, roots, fibers. It is all used, combusted, reused, and that process followed over and over again until nothing but an amazing spagyric product, complete with terpene profiles, and all remains. Stop on by TrueHempScience.com today. Get your products. Try your stuff out. I have used them for well over 5 years. I cannot recommend them more. Use the code CURIOUS7 to save 7% off your entire cart of $50 or more and get free edibles on the way out the door. Our guest in this segment is the amazing Kim Desrosiers. She is a psychic trainer. She works in the world of subtle energies like Reiki, things like that. And that's what I wanted to have you on today to talk about. Welcome to the show for the first time. Kimla, how are you today?
I'm excellent, Chris. So good to see you again.
Absolutely. We had a chance to meet, and we've been connected on social media for years and years, actually, and commented back and forth in groups, all kinds of things. But we had a chance to meet at the first Sci Games Intensive that happened right here in Austin. And it was an amazing and beautiful weekend, Kimla. I have had the opportunity. My brother owned a retreat company for years. I'm a former youth minister. I have been on dozens and dozens and dozens of retreats in my life. That was a beautiful and moving weekend of energy. That whole crowd, the lessons that you guys taught, the sessions that y'all gave were beautiful. They were in depth and really, really moving, especially the one that you gave about subtle energies, Reiki, things like that. And that's why I wanted to have you on. I do binaural beat music. I make things like this, and trying to get people to understand the subtle fields that can be changed through frequencies, even just frequency of thought and how you think, is really phenomenal. How did you first come to the world of studying this, Kimla, and following these disciplines?
Yeah, it's an interesting story. I started out as a materialist reductionist, I guess, as an engineer, and I worked as a mediator for many years, and was studying with the Tibetan Buddhists, who, when you work with the Tibetans and you would study within that lineage, eventually you embark on studying subtle energy. So moving beyond the physical and looking at the mind, because the mind sense is the main focus of the non-physical senses. They're all sort of gathered up into the non-physical mind sense. And then from there, you understand and work on all aspects of consciousness. So the non-physical is really what the Buddha was focused on, and teachings, working with energy and subtle energy specifically, but all the way up to the level of consciousness that is called the super subtle or the clear light state. And I know you've had an NDE. I think I've heard that, Chris. And so going into those rarefied states of consciousness that we have experiences of source or God, or the goddess, whatever name you want to give to it, you're there because it's not anything like here.
Yeah.
It's so completely different that you need a completely different category to say what it is. So the Buddhists are very much about exploring those territories, of finding them, of teaching others how to get there. It is an explorer's culture. So, and that's just it. Mine wasn't NDE. It was religious experience. Oh, religious.
That is what led me to the seminary, was having a full-on religious experience at the altar, where I was bilocated somewhere where I was both in the church and somewhere else simultaneously. Right. And in the presence of the most beautiful, what I can only assume is what people see at the end of the light.
Yeah.
Surrounded by the most beautiful love that I've ever felt. And to this day, I chase that. Like, that's half the reason I play music, is because when I play music, I feel that connection again. I feel it, and it's literally as strong as if you've ever put your hand in between two magnets and felt that energy that you can't physically see, but you can fully feel. Like, that's what that pull is for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So the Buddhist practices, and you can imagine in Tibet that there's not actually that much to do, right? You're at very high elevation. It's really cold. a good part of the year. There's not a lot of farming that happens. It's just, these practices are maintained and have been maintained for a long time, of working with the subtle energy system or the architecture, because what you're moving into are those higher states of consciousness, embodying them, and that divine aspect, that love that you so beautifully related, that with wisdom is the practice. So we're working with the subtle energy architecture, which is a little bit different than the physical architecture. But just like the physical architecture, there is a system to it. And by learning that system, you can evoke certain consciousness states. So that's why I called the Tibetan Buddhists explorers, because you do need to be the first one to experience that within your system. And then once you do have that experience, and then you have this interconnected awareness of all that is, then you very much operate within a non-dual level of awareness, and also navigate from that place within the part of the system that has some aspect of duality. So it's thinking about time differently. It's thinking about space differently. It's very much a multi-dimensional, multi-aspectual reality that you embark in. And that's what happened to me when I first went to India and became a student of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and took what's called an abhisheka with him. And as soon as I did that, my mind opened and experienced myself as being in these other dimensions of reality. And then there was a process of coming back and integrating that in the physical, back in my normal life. But like you said, after you have that experience, you don't forget it. It's a part of you, and it really drives the level of awareness that you're interested in. And so you let go of being interested in disagreements or drama or, conflict.
Yeah.
And you really come from a state of neutrality and equanimity. But also, from that state of peace, you're looking to enter into different states of consciousness that do have learning and experiences in them. They're just different experiences.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting that you bring up specifically the people that live at altitude in Tibet, things like that, Kimla, because there is something, and this is something that I learned from going to a panic therapist for my anxiety, and that was regulation of breath, hard regulate, realizing that no, I'm having an anxiety attack because of how I'm breathing. Like that has triggered something in my parasympathetic nervous system. Literally, just the rapidity of breathing through your mouth, exacerbated. I don't need to breathe that way. I can breathe just as much through my nose, and actually better, because you're getting more oxygen than when you panic breathe through your mouth. Your body isn't made to take in 100% oxygen through your mouth. It's made to take in food and water, and it cursorily goes to your lungs, but your nose is tied there. And when you aren't focused in that kind of breathing in that kind of way, other things happen. And even the idea of living in that kind of extreme climate. I'm sure our mutual friend Hakeem, who's been through adverse weather training, things like that, there is a point of mental checkout that you kind of have to do where you place yourself like a foot outside of your body and you just focus on task to keep moving forward. Otherwise, the overbearing force of the extreme cold and wind and will get after you all day. But when you learn that special place to be able to, like a reflex, go to, those external conditions do not affect you as much as the person next door who isn't trained in that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's that space of letting go. That's we in the Buddhist world we call that shunyata, or emptiness, and that place of spaciousness allows for us to live in a very different way. So the relationship that we can have with our breath, and seeing that breath is a carrier of wisdom for the earth, but also it carries the subtle energy on something called the winds. And there is a correlate, there is a relationship between the physical wind and the subtle energy winds. And learning that relationship gives you and expands your mind to capture both aspects simultaneously, so that you can then use your breath to ride those subtle energy winds into these very different realities, very, very different places of experience, both from a sense of self, but also from a sense of no self. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's kind of start cracking this open real quick, Kimla, and start getting into these subtle energies that you're talking about, and what they are and what they do for us, how we can begin to tap into them, for those that aren't the adept that you are in that kind of way. Because even myself, I would consider myself no adept in any way, shape, or form. But I was able to do this. I was able to bend silverware when, like right now, I'm getting ready for surgery on my hands, literally. So, like, I can't just do this right now. That is a case of extreme pain if I did.
Right.
And that happened like it was butter.
Right.
And it was fascinating just to get to the point of understanding how that frequency and that subtle energy between myself and an object worked.
Yeah, that was interesting. I mean, I remember you doing it. And why don't you tell me what it was like when the perception that you had as you realized that there was this physical thing that was happening from a non-physical cause, your thoughts about how you were going to bend it, your visualization, your breathing, the things you were doing that were non-physical that led to the moment where you knew you could bend that.
Well, it was a combination of a couple things. I had bent one spoon previously, and that was with Angela Thompson Smith on the remote viewing, the Irva cruise a couple years ago for the anniversary. And we were just sitting there and we were talking, and I was like, I've never been able to do it. I tried at the Irva conference in Menlo Park where Hakeem and I met. And I'd never been able to do it. And she was like, what you want to do is to find that moment of pure joy. Find that moment that whenever you get lonely or the world is hard, that you go to it and it makes you feel happy. And what you want to do is it's not a Neo, there is no spoon. It's the fact that there is no difference between you and the spoon. The spoon is you and you are the spoon, and invite that spoon into that moment. Invite that spoon to be a part of that and to feel that love and that joy with you, to be one with that. And with that was married what you were teaching and what Hakeem was teaching that weekend, which was the idea of don't let the preconceived notion of can't be there. Approach this, the same way Christ says, come unto me like a child. Have a childlike mentality of this is fun. Same way Angela Thompson Smith was that moment from when you're a child, when you're happy. Like, invite that spoon to be a part of that. Enjoy that childlike joy of wonder and awe and beauty, and experience that and be one with that and vibrate with that. Don't focus on bending the spoon. If you focus on bending the spoon, you're going to break the spoon. You're going to force the metal. It's going to kink. It's going to get a crease in it. things like that. So yeah, it was the idea of just be and flow with it. Don't question it. Don't treat it as though it's something that's hard to do or something that you're trying to force your will upon. But treat it as just a moment of being with that. And it was then that, yeah, I felt it slightly warm to the touch, and it was, it just went. I didn't bend it. I actively took it and with 2 fingers, like, twisted it. Like, it wasn't like my hands around it. Like, it was just finger strength. That was it. Just fingertips. So yeah, that was my experience for me. That is how I took a straightened fork to that.
Yeah, I love when people, I love hearing the experience the first time, or the second time, because it is so full of wonder, right? Because this aspect of this connection between our physical world and our subtle energy world is revealed, right? And especially with a second or third time, because now it's becoming something more than a one-off, right? There is some stability to this relationship between the physical and the subtle that has a level of predictability now, and then you start to trust it, and then things really, really start to change, because that trust piece is inherently important to being able to work trans-dimensionally, right? Between both of those levels, you have to trust it. Otherwise, you're not going to venture into this unknown territory, because the ego doesn't want us to experience that.
Yeah.
Come here, you.
Yeah. Well, and that's a huge point to bring up. The idea of ego, superego, that whole just psychological concept of there is something that when we try and put us on the situation instead of just being there for the situation, something different happens. And that's something that even whenever I speak about paranormal experience, Kimla, it's the idea of, are you having a genuine paranormal experience, or are you having an experience that you poked into being because instead of just preparing a rote checklist of gear and then going and examining a site, you dove down rabbit holes and you started listening to stories and you started putting all of this energy into the space. Like, you may have actively charged that space. What you're experiencing may be something totally in Hitchhiker guise as to what you're wanting to experience. And even just the quantum concept of that in and of itself, the idea that you may be having the exact experience that you're programming the space to give you.
That's right. Yeah. And certainly if we look at time as being having a lot of flexibility in it, not this
set fixed thing.
Yes, a fixed event that we're following, but we can have. I mean, that's why I love gamers and with the quests and the side missions and all this flexibility that you have in your explorations to venture into these unknown territories. It's very, we resonate with that as if, games, we resonate with that because that's really the way we operate. This is how we operate when we start to explore beyond what we were told was available to us. And there is that trust that you need to step into this territory that maybe, Kimla told me I could go into the dream bardo and do these things, or I could go into the clear light from the dream bardo through using this technique. But you have to be the one that shows up for that. You are the one that tries the thing and uses the guidance and the instructions to have that experience, there is someone that comes before you, who is giving you guidance to how to get that thing to work correctly. And I think that's, so inherent to our excitement, to what we're interested in doing. When you think of the totality of like even the human experience, like we don't do that many things, we don't engage in a lot of non-physical experiences until we let go of needing the physical experience and we can trust our own mind. And I do feel like there is this barrier, especially with Western science, that we don't feel that we can trust our own mind. And the reason that we can't is we're not that familiar with meditation. And all meditation is a familiarization of our own mind. So we've spent enough time with it. We've experienced it enough to be able to trust it. So, even to a fault, like in a lot of meditation practices, they'll say, if the Buddha's sitting next to you, if a UFO comes down next to you, just don't engage with it. Just keep in your practice, So it's a bit to a fault, where it's these cool things will happen, but that's just a temporary state where your discipline is coming in to prioritize the focus and intention that you've sent to stabilize the mind. But once you have a really good, stable mind, you don't question it after that, because somebody else can have a totally different experience from you.
Yeah.
And both experiences can be true simultaneously. It never becomes the or proposition. It's then the and proposition. And so your experience, Chris, of life and mine can both be equally valid, and we can still have different experiences, but share
conflicting point of views about the experience, even.
Right. Exactly. Because our perspectives can never be identical. And that's just by design. We can't have the same perspective. Nobody sees the same nobody sees the same rainbow, right?
Yeah.
A single rainbow, you can only have one view of that rainbow, and somebody else standing next to you is going to see a slightly different rainbow.
The colors are slightly shifted because of their angle of view. And and even the whole Einsteinian concept of time is relative to the observer. It's not a locked in 60 seconds to a minute, 60 minutes to an hour. Like, it's a variance of that, and it's different for every single person experiencing that same moment. And when you start looking at things like that, this is why I say regularly that since the proving of quantum entanglement and quantum entanglement winning the Nobel Prize, scientists are running to us, Kimla. They are running to things like meditation. They're running to things like psi games and psi abilities and that kind of stuff, because it's something that has been right there and on the verge for so long, but the two are so intertwined. They're so entirely the same thing. Even the idea of every experiencer is by default a citizen scientist. Like, you had an experience or observation that made you have a question. You started gathering data. Like, you started testing that data. And like, they're integrally intertwined in that kind of way. And when you start looking at energies like what you're talking about, when you start looking at the ways in which we subtly influence the world around us regularly, it's huge. It's beyond ripple effects. It's like stomping around in a bathtub.
That's fun. I like that.
Well, and
stomping around in the bathtub.
Well, I think it's the idea that, most people don't realize the wake that they can leave in the world to begin with, just energetically. And I know this is hippy dippy of your host, folks. But this is one of the few things that I am fully hippy dippy about, because it's all vibration. It's all frequency. Like even as just an audio engineer, it's the fact of we are open waveform held together by a quantum field. I am 90% empty space. We're sharing we're sharing an electron shell right now, Kimla.
Yeah.
Like that's phenomenal to think about when you think about just the way the universe moves, and the fact that, yes, we can sympathetically ride the same syncopated wave of energy, that we can feel these things via distance, that we can connect to them via distance. It takes things, it really... It's fascinating how, once again, massive the subtle world is. Despite it being called subtle energies, like once you've tapped into them and you understand them, the things you can move are massive. The things you can do are massive. Yeah.
I mean, it's a paradigm shift every time you go out. If you're an explorer of the mind, when you come back into this reality, and ground yourself to this earth plane, you also bring with you the experiences that you had while you were streamed out into another reality, right? And Bob Monroe talks about this a lot in his books. But everyone who does subtle energy practices has these experiences, right? They're very repeatable. I mean, the technology of our bodies allows for us to stream our consciousness into established, I'll call them bardos. The Tibetans call them bardos. Call them what you will, but they're different states of consciousness that we learn who we are through that experience, and we come back as more without losing any part of ourselves. So sometimes when I'll go into this territory called the primordial substrate, which has infinite time, there's nothing really. It's like kind of an sea of consciousness, and the reality that's within that is a very different reality than a physical reality, but there is still consciousness within that state. So when I've gone out and you lose your identity with who you are here on this plane, so much so that when you come back from this infinite experience of time, when I come back, I'll be like, oh my God, I'm in the place where my kids live, this is where my children are. And they haven't aged. They haven't gone into, some other reality, or at least what they're experiencing simultaneously with this identity that I have in this state. We are synced up here. So you can have these multidimensional experiences by using the subtle energy to travel, right? Just like you would buy a ticket to go on a plane and go to Asia, you buy a ticket by your practice, by practicing your breath work, by practicing your visualizations, you buy a ticket, and then you hand that ticket in when you decide that you want to travel there. And I lead people into the Dream Bardo and beyond in our Dream Bardo group using these practices. So we as a group have these shared experiences. Now, not everyone is having the same exact experience. Yeah. But when we come back the next morning, after going out, we share our experiences, what happened to them. And you can see that there is this very objective reality that we are sharing, with also simultaneously a subjective reality aspect as well. So it's incredibly, it's a completely different reality, really.
Well, and over the weekend, of the training, and even just being on the Cygames executive team, things like that, one of the things that we keep on trying to bring up is, how do we get, the only real way to say it, Kimla, is how do we get normal people to understand this?
Yeah.
How do we get the average person? And you brought something up a minute ago that I think truly is hammer on the nail head, and that is the fact of the quiet calm. We in the West specifically, and any cop will tell you this, you want to get the truth out of a subject? Just shut up. Just shut up. They will tell you, because it's their compunction to fill the empty space. It's their compunction to fill the void with something, anything. The silence is uncomfortable. The silence is, we don't know how to be quiet. And the former seminarian, I practiced ecstatic prayer for years. Like I said, religious experience led me to the seminary. The idea of being comfortable within the silence of your own mind. I tell people regularly the difference when they're like, I've tried meditation. I don't know if I can remote view because I've tried meditation and I can never get quiet. And I'm like, the two things are different.
Yeah.
Meditation is where you're trying to quiet your monkey mind and focus on silence and only be silent and just be. Just ism, just be. Whereas remote viewing, you want to give that monkey a typewriter. You want that monkey to write down everything it sees and feels and smells and hears. They're two different paths that both lead to the same place.
Yes.
That both lead to this ascended point of consciousness and channeling information in, but they're two totally different approaches to getting there.
Yeah. The mastery part of the mind is incredibly intriguing and evocative, right? To imagine that we can, the mind has these simplified aspects so that we can grasp it, that we can start working with it. If it's not graspable, which I feel like a lot of the yin energy, the spaciousness in the West, we're very yang dominant and we're very doing oriented as materialist thinkers, scientists, and that's half the story. So we're sort of missing the other part, and it's not as simple to say the other yin energy is just spaciousness. It's not. It's the interplay. It allows for the interplay and the creative force to arise. So the more fulsome experience of life really does come from integrating both aspects of the mind, that yin energy and the yang energy. Yeah. And but I appreciate the remote viewing, because that is a use of the mind, or
absolutely.
In a way that is a focused way with stability and has objectiveness as its root desire. We'll just say.
Well, especially controlled remote viewing, things like that, where specifically your monitor will be like, let's stay away from the nouns. Which in Buddhism would be like, let's remove your ego there.
Right.
Let's remove that egocentric view where you're giving something a definition. Let's get past that.
Right.
Because that's you putting you on that. That's not the actual information that's coming in.
Right. But we love to work with the nouns.
Absolutely.
There is you can
eventually get to a noun, but it shouldn't start with a noun.
That's right. So there are techniques, right, that we use that amplify one and illuminate the other, right? So we can, like in dowsing, for example, there is objective information that we are collecting and connecting with on the surface of the earth. Like dowsing's been used for as long as humans have been here to locate things that are not obviously present. So it is like remote viewing in a way. But typically in dowsing, we use a tool, right? We use some tools. We can use pendulums or we can use dowsing rods. And those are the intermediary physical an instrument that allows us to translate the psychic information into a physical objective result, right? So dowsing historically has been used in finding water. It's very efficient. It's a very efficient way of locating water. But we also use it in subtle energy practices to locate things like earth chakras, right? Sacred sites, ley lines. Yeah. And this enlivens our experience of life to know that these other cultures have these structures that have been used, and they give us the technology. Yeah. They're basically passing along energy tradition using their structures that remain from their use of it. And we're picking that up, studying it, and then identifying how we could also adapt those uses into our practice.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And you know, it's interesting that you bring up the idea of passing this on, and the idea that, you know, they're basically showing us how to tap into this energy. It brings up a lesson that I used to teach my 7th graders all the time. Like everyone that I taught spirituality to, my class, the first class, I would give everybody a slinky. And the lesson was pretty cool. Slinkies are fun. They go downstairs over in pairs, all kinds of things, Kimla, but don't touch the slinky. Behold it. Look at it, imagine it, all kinds of things, but don't touch it. And by the end of class, we would get into the physics conversation of potential energy and a spring, and the idea that here in this spring lies all of this potential energy to do amazing things. But until you push it, that energy does nothing.
Right.
It sits dormant.
Right.
That's the universe. Tons of potential energy, and it's there to do all kinds of things for you.
Yeah.
But you have to push it. You have to be the one to instigate the motion. Otherwise, it just sits there like a stacked spring waiting to happen. Waiting for you.
That's right. Yeah. It's in the Tibetan tradition, you know, we have these potentials called bayuls, and they are on the surface of the earth, but there are like hidden valleys or hidden areas that are accessible because you've, through your practice, raised your vibration high enough that you can access that bayul. You can enter into it. So that's, you know, we have these carrots really on sticks, right? Just like the potentials that you're showing the kids in the slinky. Yeah. Like you actually have to do your practice to be able to get good enough to be able to access these places. And I think this is where the limitation in science, you know, scientists do need expertise, right? To study the subject matter that they have. But the objectiveness of that subject matter comes out of a shared experience of what is objective, right? Yeah. Everybody understands within the scientific discipline that's being studied, what is the objective truth related to this subject matter, right? So the same is true for things like bayuls and remote viewing and dowsing. There is an objective truth that's known to the practitioner. And if you're not practiced and not a master within that practice, you do not have a view into the truth of what that is, right? So there is a barrier there that is created because the person isn't ready to see it, right? Yeah. And there is that letting go and that ego disillusionment that has to happen because the ego is a subtle energy and it does block things and new experiences and change, right? So one does need to have a mastery of their ego to be able to, say, walk into a Beul, or to be able to remote view objectively into something. Not to say that remote viewers always are, unbiased, but you certainly have the fullest expression of that practice when there is a neutrality and an unbiased view that can be held stable within the person and the viewer themselves.
Absolutely. No different than the scientist in the lab. Like if you are so one of my favorite phrases in the world comes from science, and it's killing your darlings. And it's the idea of, like, you came up with the hypothesis, you came up with the theory, but when presented evidence to the contrary, you are fully willing to shoot it out of the sky yourself.
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny.
Because it don't fly. Cool that you promoted it, thought about it, like, beautiful thought experiment. It gets us somewhere ultimately. But you're willing to shoot your own idea down because, hey, you're totally right. And even with the idea of a scientist in a lab losing their spark, a chef in their kitchen losing their passion for cooking, the end result suffers. And especially when it comes to spiritual work. I think a lot of people get very, very disillusioned very rapidly, Kimla, because yes, there are people who, probably much like Michael Jordan, are much more adept naturally at bending a spoon than me. He still practiced, he still played, but he was a naturally gifted person as well. But anybody can learn to do this. Anybody can learn to pick up a basketball and shoot. Are you going to be Michael Jordan? Probably not. But you can play basketball. But you can play basketball. You can have fun. What is the dangerous part? Is there a dangerous part of the ascended master losing the childlike fun?
I think,
I think sense of wonder and awe of what would apparently become the absolute commonplace of, like, spoon.
Well, yes. Well, we see that with the Arhats historically. There's the beings that were the Arhats, and they were all the energy masters, and then the Buddha had to come in and kind of bring back that heart piece, and that's really the Heart Sutra that was delivered on Vulture Peak, was because they had lost their heart. They lost that childlike wonder with the wisdom aspect, and lost this part of them that is human, the humanness. So I do think that there's a risk there for everyone, for sure. I think that you can be a stone Buddha. I think that that's part of this, of trying to find and maintain a connection with the wonder, even like I do think dowsing is such a beautiful practice because it does necessarily involve the earth, right? And connections through water. The consciousness of the earth herself, that connection and curiosity around venturing out and finding other being states that are just offset from our physical reality, that will enliven our experience of life and deepen our experience of who we are by being able to find things that are just offset from our physical domain, and dowsing and finding portals, nature portals, specifically allow for that, because we're still in the physical when we find them, and we can see another expression of a physical reality that is just slightly offset from our reality.
Well, and it's interesting because there has been a whole lot of research in the last probably 5-6 years into the world of specifically portals, energy superhighways that exist within our cosmos that are basically like slipstreams between points of energy in the cosmos. And once again, when you begin to just break apart the esoteric notion of us being a non-localized consciousness, Kimla, we're all a unique vibration consciously, but we all take part in something else that is bigger, larger, like you said, going to the dream work classes that you're doing right now with the dream yoga. I used to do dream work years ago, and it was just on my own, but it was some of the most revealing things in the world. The fact that I could go to sleep with the intent of finding an answer. Like, I'm having a problem, I'm stuck on an issue, whatever, but I had specifically a crystal castle that I still use. Like, that is where I go, and I go to find my guide. And it is like a guided path that I go down to this edifice that I forged and made in my meditation world going to sleep. So the idea of that, the idea of, and even the idea that everybody being trained to do that in and of itself links you all in a plane of consciousness. Whether or not you've built the same place of meditation doesn't matter. It's the fact that you're all going to the same non-localized place.
Yeah, there is a sequence that has to take place to synchronize. So we do have the same experience.
Okay.
We find ourselves in
Even
the
better.
same locale. Yeah. So that's true with like physical portals as well, right? You and I as individuals could easily pass if we knew the way, we knew where it was located, and we knew how to access that particular portal. We could, as individuals, go through the portal. To go through a portal with other individuals requires coordination, right? And to have that shared experience of what's on the other side of the portal does take communication and also sometimes being in the physical together, but not necessarily if it's a non-physical portal. However, I think we're moving into the state of a shared experience, this collective awakening that really has us connecting purposefully, right? Like, we do have a reason to come together, to explore together, to have shared experiences together that are different than the ones we've had in the 3D. And just the fact that, like, you have this amazing podcast, this is linking and creating the grids that allow for that shared experience. People will find your podcast, they'll listen to it because they know where it's located. And this is how portals work as well, because they have a relationship to the channels of the earth, the dragon lines and the ley lines that are on the surface of the earth. They do exist in relationship to those surface expressions of energy. And they do have enough energy behind them where you can have a different experience because there is enough of the subtle energy aligned in that place to be able to access it.
Well, and, that ties into a very important concept that you and Hakeem both spoke about during the intensive weekend. And there's another intensive weekend coming up that we'll get into here in a minute. But that is the idea of alignment. And because I think that is where a lot of people get lost, whether you're talking Christian prayer, Kimla, whether you're talking manifestation in the way a pastor's saying you can manifest things. And it's funny to see, as a former seminarian, it's funny to see all of the churches following exactly what the esoteric and New Age have been saying for years. No, you could do this. But what you have to do, because just like a ley line in the earth, you are not going to change the direction of that ley line.
Right.
What you have to do is align either yourself or your target with the ley line.
Right.
You have to align yourself and what you're trying, because, hey, it may not be the fact that what you're praying for and the way you're praying for it is what's supposed to happen in the grander scheme of the universe, or what's best for you in the long run. You know, so you've got to align yourself with what the goal is and take those steps. Once again, pushing the slinky. The slinky ain't going to do the work for you.
That's right. So the UFO superhighway line that runs around a certain longitude and range within that longitudinal area, you have to go to it to experience that level of activity. It's not coming to you, you know. I mean, you can call in UFOs, right? You can call in UAPs, but there is a relationship that has to there is an inherent relationship that exists that allows for that to happen. It's not coming from that egoic place of I'm calling them in and so they're going to show up. Yeah. Right. It just doesn't work that way. And the awareness that it doesn't work that way really comes back to fundamentally what you just said, which is you have to go to the thing. You have to push the slinky in the direction of where that slinky can connect and align. And so knowing the orders of operation and knowing how that works allows for this objective view of how to get subtle energy to actually move in the way that you desire. Because to get it to move in a certain way, you do necessarily have to let go of certain belief systems, right? Of certain individuated ideas of what you want to experience, because they're just not available in that territory like that. They aren't available. They are in the physical, right? That's the 3D domain is somewhere where you can have very specific experiences. But if you want new experiences of this reality that don't look like that anymore, don't look like the 3D and 4D reality, there are new skills to be learned. There are new practices to encounter and new people to align to and new places on the earth, both in the physical and just in the plane of existence, that allow you to have those experiences. It's not just a free-for-all, right? It's not a free-for-all. And I think when people first wake up, they're very... at least I know when I was, it's sort of like, it does feel like a free-for-all, right? Because you've never been there before. You don't know how the energy works. You don't even know if there is something to guide you or if it's just a big empty space and you're filling it with yourself. That's that, mind going into nihilism.
Yeah. And a prime example of that, because I never got to the point of full-on astral travel. All right. That is where my dream work began, was trying to get to that. Mm-hmm. And I could do my meditation. I could get to my castle. I could talk to my guide, all kinds of things, Kimla. But when it came to that utter physical sensation that so many people talk about, where if you can get past the sensation of falling, it is that moment where, as you're drifting off to sleep, folks, where suddenly you feel like you have just stepped off an 85-story building and you jerk awake. That's that feeling of falling, where like you are stepping into somewhere else now. And once again, it's that fear of being by yourself. With yourself.
Yeah.
Which can be a scary thing. Like it's a scary place in there, most of our heads. Kimla, there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of doubt. There's a lot of regret. There's a huge panoply of things that we regularly shove with a shoulder into the closet as we're shoving more stuff in it. So when you get to that point of release, it can be scary. It can be scary, that point of release, for a lot of people, even for me still. I've still yet to, without the help of Mother Nature, yet to be able to hit that realm of release and escape, where I fully fall and keep falling and just start flying and hit the point of astral travel. Because even whenever I remote view, I'm not astral traveling. That's at least not from what I imagine astral travel. I am receiving. I'm receiving at that point. I'm not purposefully going to adventure or to find answer in that kind of way. So how do people that are working on that, how do you get your students past that point of internal fear, so to speak, and to the point of release?
Yeah.
And trust.
Such an amazing question. I mean, you talked about the plant teachers, right? And that I feel like is part of their mission, actually, the master plants. And there's something that I recently discovered. I've been curious about it, looking for it for years. I'm going to come back to it, but I want to address your question.
Sure.
That we, when I was in that place, right? I came from a lineage that told you that was what was there. That there was no ground, but there never was, right? There was the illusion of
the ground was a lie anyway.
Exactly. And you hear that enough times from people, masters that you love and trust, you will step off at some point. And I think we're at a disadvantage in the West in a way with that level of trust with a teacher, because teachers have historically in the West violated our trust. So it's
have a lot of ego involved with themselves.
Yeah. And so there's this it's a harder game here with that, especially with what you just described. It's a harder, you don't trust, right? When I stepped into the place where I could get to the clear light, it was because my teacher took my hand and showed me how to get there, right? And so I do think with the so I've been curious about how we get there in the West, because it's kind of baked into the East that we have these teacher-student relationships, but here in the West, they don't work the same way. They can't, because of the way the West is, right? And if we look at duality, we look at the logic and the wisdom of having a separate system from the East, which we absolutely do.
1,000%.
Right?
Medically, spiritually, everything.
We're combining East and West. We're doing that. That's the duality that we need to merge together. So how do we bring the best of the East into the West, right? So that we can have these experiences. And I do think that what you just mentioned is the biggest obstacle for many people, is because we don't have systems we can trust, actually.
Yeah.
We don't have those systems. They're not trustworthy because they are money driven. They're very materialistic in that way. So we're going to have to find another way. And I do see in spiritual circles how the crown chakra of the earth. Now, the crown chakra of the earth has been associated with Mount Kailash for about 26,000 years and has been stable there for a long time. And back in 2019, I did a pilgrimage around Kailash. I had already gone through my awakening, so I was already aware of subtle energy. I was had all my clairs, and I was able to perceive a lot when I arrived at Kailash. And one thing that I knew was true for me, and it might be true for many others, but the crown was no longer at Kailash. It's a very sacred mountain, but for me, the crown energy was not there. So since 2019, I had heard from some other other masters that it had moved to South America, specifically Peru. And so from 2019 forward, I've been curious about where this crown energy has moved. And I've investigated through meditation, through connecting with the earth. And it's been elusive, Chris, until this past Easter. And I did a deep meditation. I opened something called a Reiki portal. And in that meditation, I asked for help from Metatron, which is a pretty high frequency energy.
Yep.
So I invited Metatron to teach me, basically. And then what I found from that teaching after I left the teaching, I received some teachings. Metatron came in as this, I don't know, a lot of Christ consciousness is viewed as a lion. And while I was in the Reiki portal, which was more of a 5D portal, or it has, it's not so much like a sphere. It's more like a, I don't know. It has many points of connection within it. So like a tube, but with many points of connection. But through that tube, what I could see was Metatron as this giant lion, and it was running over the sky lakes that you do see in Kailash, around Kailash, these very high sky lakes. And that energy was running across the sky lake. Now that's the visual, and that's the movie that I saw in my mind's eye. However, when I came out of the meditation, what I understood was the location of the new crown chakra. And so what I ended up doing was looking that up. And what I found was that it was already identified as a sacred mountain in Peru. And it's called El Cano. And it's in the shape of a triangle, which is exactly or a pyramid, and that's exactly what Kailash is as well. It's known as a pyramid. Both mountains have never been summited because it's an El Cano is a Andean Apu, which is a mountain spirit. Yep. So from the people just wouldn't climb it, right? And when I looked, Chris, at the location of this mountain, it was smack dab on the main dragon line of the earth, and it was just south of the first chakra at Mount Shasta, and it was north of Lake Titicaca, which is the second chakra. So it was just like, oh my God, this is exactly why the crown has moved to South America, to the Peruvians, is because these plant teachers like ayahuasca are stepping forward, and not just ayahuasca, but all of the master plants are here to really give us the permission slip to be able to access that state of letting go, of trust, so they can embody the teacher, right, for us for a time till we get the frequency and start to trust our own ability to navigate and step into those domains, because they take our hand and they escort us in there. And then once we're there, we know how to get there. Just like you go on a hike, the first time someone shows you, either you look on, All Trails, or you have your buddy take you. It's the same thing. They're showing us that big, big divide. They get us over the hump to get into those spaces, so then we can find our way again, and we can continue to visit and access that crown information and use that crown chakra as a portal into other domains as well.
Well, and specifically chakral energy is I think probably the easiest way. I think it's the easiest onboarding for most people. I think a lot of people over at least the last 20, 30 years have come to understand the point of chakras. They've gotten used to singing bowls at places, meditations, things like that. But understanding the energetic field of chakra, understanding the ways that, once again, that we tap into the world around us through vibration, the ways that these things move us, the fact that color is light and light is sound. Like it's fascinating to know that every color has a tone, you know, all of these things, and they're fully connected. Even to the point of how that same frequency, and this is how I explain binaural beats to people, is normally, because I'll ask them, you're familiar with the concept of a sound bath, right? Of like a Tibetan singing bowl, you know, hit the root chakra. I was like, now your body responds to that vibration. No different than it responds to the vibration of the wind outside, what have you. It's a subtle response, but it responds to it. And the more it's exposed to it, the more it'll respond to it. Sure. However, the binaural beat is making your brain make that frequency. So one of them is like taking your brain to the massage parlor and getting a massage and relaxing with the frequency. And yeah, you know, the more you get a massage, the more you're going to relax and be there. The other is like taking your brain to the gym and forcing your brain to make the frequency when it needs the frequency. You know, and when you combine both of those types of therapy, because you can't do pure tone therapy, you can't do binaural beat therapy through speakers the way you can pure tone therapy. You have to isolate the frequencies between the left and right ear. Like isolation is key. Without isolation, the binaural beat doesn't get made. So it's interesting just to see those two facets of the same concept of frequency and how your body reacts to it in that kind of way. And the fact that, yes, you can train your body to generate these chakral frequencies when you need them, when you need to connect with that, and also train your body to respond and be like, hey, you, when it feels that frequency in the same kind of way.
Yeah. And the healing is the bridge, right? It's the bridge to the knowing, right? Because you knew what you were like, you knew what your mind, your heart, your feeling states, your physical state, you knew what it was like before the healing, and you know what it's like after. Yeah. And so that creates the bridge into trusting that these things in the subtle energy realm have the power, have the technology to be able to heal you, is to have the experience of healing. And then once you're healed using that, you just know that it's so much easier than healing anything in the physical, right? Because it just takes the switch of your mind. It just takes the switch of the frequency. And then you're going to preferentially always choose that rather than physically healing, right? Or needing to go to a hospital or you know, somewhere else, because you're not going to ever get into that state. Right. It becomes multidimensional in that you're not preferentially choosing those experiences anymore. So they necessarily don't happen. Right. So that the lines of time, the lines of sound, the lines of these ley lines, the channels within us that exist not just on the planet, but also exist within us. And once we understand these chakras that exist within the central channel, we know how it works. We know how to maintain them, like you maintain your car. Yeah. Yeah. Right? Exactly. As long as you maintain it, you're not going to get sick. You're not going to get unwell because you are doing the maintenance on the system that you already own. Yeah. Right, that you already have.
Yeah, and so much of that, people ask me, because I am rarely sick, Kim. I attribute a lot of that to the fact that I worked with children for years. There's always one of them in the class that's snotty. Always. But aside from that, it's the fact that I no longer have a toxic mentality to the way that I view life, to the way that I view the world around me. I dealt with hard depression for years and years after I left the seminary because I mean, hey, you abandon a call to God. What are you going to do, other than beat yourself up for like a decade or more of your life, Kimla? But when you realize that like you are the sower of your own seed, that you are the waterer of your own field, that you are the plower of your own crop, like suddenly you realize that no, you have grown every one of these seeds. You've done all of this and you can undo it. You can, and that's why I'm saying, and before we leave here, because we've had some beautiful conversation tonight, but I think that the one seed that everybody should water tonight, that everybody can water, whether you are meditating with chakras, folks, whether you want to learn to bend spoons and forks, this is the lady to teach you. I'm here to tell you right now. But the one thing you need to do before that, you need to be able to sit with yourself inside your own head. Like you said, you need to be comfortable and firm within yourself. No different than finding the love of your life. If you can't love yourself to the end, how are you going to love somebody else? How can you show them unconditional love if you don't have it for yourself? So how can people begin to, because we'll get eventually to the point in our conversations on this show, Kimla, because I intend to have you back again and again and again. We will get to the point of how do you silence the monkey mind? How do you get to that? But I think more than anybody right now in this world, people need to know how to just be still and be just ism in their own head with themselves, because that's hard. That's hard to deal with yourself, the decisions you've made. If you're out there dealing with that in your life, folks, believe me, you don't have to. You don't have to. That is a burden you are putting on yourself.
That's right. And knowing that it's not really you, that was not even you, it's more of a fear of you, that's really keeping those thoughts present. It's the fear of, if I'm going to make that same choice again, what does this mean for who I am? That's really what we care most about. Who are we? Who are we at our very core? So sitting in meditation would be difficult if you're afraid of who you are.
Yeah.
Why would you want to sit and look at someone that you're afraid of? You wouldn't. Right? So we have to find a reason to do that. Everybody's going to be different. Why do I want to sit and see the beauty that is me, like who I am right now? And maybe that's the place to start, Chris, is just trusting the person you are. Just give them 100% trust. Who you are right now. This is the now. This is who you are. Let's just trust this person, okay? We can always look back at the past. We can look at the person we identified with and see what it is about that we didn't like, or what we did like and maybe are afraid of. Lots of different questions. But if we just sit with the person we are today within this now moment and try to give that person love, I think that's the first start. So that Ho'oponopono, the Hawaiians have this way of working very simply as a shamanistic practice, just sitting with the person you are, right? And saying, I'm sorry. Forgive me. I love you. Just saying that. To the person that you might sit down and judge, the person from your past that you aren't even today.
Yep.
Just sitting there and telling that person that they need to hear that, trusting that person's also going to get that message. They're going to get that message of forgiveness, of love, right? that they didn't do anything wrong, that there's nothing wrong with who they are. They did their best at the time, just like every one of us is doing every moment of the day.
Yep.
So trusting the person you are now, because you do want to spend time with them. Like the best part of the day is spending time in the quiet, looking at your own mind. It's the most beautiful thing. What's that movie? The Beautiful Mind?
Yeah.
The mathematician. That, the access point, the portal into who we truly are is only there. It's only there. There's no other way. There's no other ticket. That's how you're going to access these incredible dimensions, is to allow for that portal to open and to have the trust to go through.
Absolutely. Kimla, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for your truly open, honest, and candid conversation. Once again, I look forward to having you on again and again and again to talk about these deep, deep spiritual concepts, because it's something that I truly feel that the whole world needs right now. In a big take 2 steps back, 3 deep breaths kind of situation. I think that we all need to learn to find that calm, quiet place inside with ourselves. And like you were saying, that point of forgiveness, that point of agape, brotherly love with ourselves, where if we can learn to forgive ourselves, we can learn to forgive the whole world.
I do.
So
that's exactly it.
Before we let you go, you have an upcoming intensive with Cygames. And in addition to that, you have all kinds of classes, courses, things like that. Let everybody know where they can go to keep up with everything that is Kimla, where they can go to register for the upcoming Cygames intensives and your classes as well, or sessions.
Yeah. I mean, I just, like you said at the top of the hour, oh my gosh, these intensives with Hakeem are like, they're the best.
They're so cool, man. So
cool. My God. They're the best. I had such a blast, and all the people, the community that we created in that moment. I mean, what an exceptional highlight of my life. Working with 35 people, bending spoons, picking up magnetizing needles. I'm an engineer. I know how hard that is if you try to do it in the physical, right? So it was like, it was just so special. And we're doing it again, and we're doing it in North Carolina. And I looked it up before getting on the call, and we are smack dab on a ley line where the facility is. Oh. So we're going to have a lot of power in our going with our intention at this location that we've selected. So we're going to have dowsing. I'm going to take people through portals. I'm going to show you how to access them, how to find them. And in real time, we're going to have those experiences. We're also going to learn or improve if you're already a remote viewer. We have an incredible, Michelle's going to be teaching that.
Awesome.
And then Hakeem, who's incredible and everything, will be there. And then also the Cygames winner, one of the Cygames winners, is going to teach us in Mindsight, which is non-ocular seeing and just relying on your third eye exclusively. And lots of cool things happen from that. So I'm looking forward to that. And I think there's a code on my, I don't think it's on my website yet, but I'll put it up as soon as we're done here, but for 10% off that training. So I'll put that up on my website, which is www.kim-law.com. So under group events, you'll find that listing. And then I do work with clients one-on-one, teaching Reiki mostly, teaching psychic ability, Tumo, you name it. I have a whole list of subtle energy practices on there. You can do so much with subtle energy. So it doesn't, the sky's the limit. It's whatever you want to learn. I'll support you in that. And and I'd love to meet anyone who listens to your podcast. I'm sure they're amazing people.
Absolutely. Kimla, thank you once again so much for your time. It's been more than a pleasure. It's more than a pleasure over the weekend with the intensive. Godspeed to all the students that are going to the upcoming intensive. I have taken Michelle's remote viewing class. It's phenomenal. Yeah. It is. I've taken Lynn Buchanan's, I've taken hers, I've taken a few other lessons, and I will say that I typically fall right into what Michelle and Carl taught me in their lessons as far as methodology. It is very much a hit the ground running methodology. It's really great. So good luck with that whole weekend, Kimla. Hold the line real quick while we close things out with the audience. While you are online, everybody, checking out the amazing work of Kimla at kim-la.com, kimla.com. Make sure to also stop on by SciGamesInternational.com. That is where you can get your tickets for the upcoming Sci Games. I'm here to tell you, folks, I do events for a living. This is an event on the scale of nothing else out there. It is entirely one of a kind and unique. Come on by, check it out. SciGamesInternational.com is where you can go to buy your tickets. Of course, while you're there, make sure to stop on by CuriousRealm.com. That is where you can like, follow, subscribe, and that is where you can find your link to the field observation and encounter log. If you are an investigator in the world of paranormal, cryptozoology, UFO, UAP, if you are out taking witness statements, the field observation and encounter log is your back pocket log to write down all of your field data in a scientific way so that your data is ready to shake hands with science come the day that you need to do so. Thank you, as always, everybody, for your open hearts, your open minds. Without that, the conversation is not possible. And without the conversation, humanity does not march forward. So remember, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and stay curious. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of The Curious Realm. Stay tuned for more guests, forbidden topics, and hidden truths. Follow us on social media by searching Curious Realm. To download the official Curious Realm app and view the Knowledge Vault, or become a sponsor of Curious Realm, visit our website at curiousrealm.com. Curious Realm is available on your favorite podcast and video services, curiousrealm.com, as well as KGRA Radio, APR TV, and the official Curious Realm app for Roku devices. Curious Realm is a proud member of the Ground Zero Media family of podcasts. For more shows and members-only content, visit groundzeroplus.com today. Thanks for listening. Stay curious. And remember, the other side is always watching.